Malik woke before the sun. The small clock on the trailer wall blinked 5:12. He moved quietly so he would not wake Amina, his 12-year-old daughter, who still slept under the thin blanket. He clicked on the small lamp and went to the kitchen. He boiled water, heated the leftover flatbread from last night, and made the weak tea that was all they could afford some days. He hummed softly as he prepared Amina's school uniform, an other shirt with a small tear at the collar, carefully stitched so it would last a little longer. He laid it out on the chair beside her bed, then gently shook her awake. Her eyes opened. Slowly, the way they always did, trusting and bright. "Dad?" she mumbled, rubbing sleep from her face. "Time," Malik said, with a soft smile. "You got a big day. Don't forget your math paper." She sat up, pulled the blanket tight, and smiled back. They had a small routine. He helped her brush her teeth with the cracked toothbrush they shared, tucked her hair behind her ears, and tucked the shirt into her clean but faded pants. She ate her breakfast while he packed a small lunch to pieces of bread, a slice of cheese, and a fruit from the market when he could stretch the money. She kissed him on the cheek before heading out to the rickety school van that stopped by the main road. She waved and gave him a thumbs up. He watched her go, and for a moment, the whole hard world felt okay. Then he turned toward the garage. The garage was a metal shed behind their trailer. The roof leaked when it rained, and the concrete floor was cracked in places. Tools hung from hooks, the same ones his father used years ago. A faded calendar on the wall had a picture of a truck that had long ago lost all its shine. But Malik still kept it because it had a saying in faded letters, "Work honest, even when the world is not." He said it out loud sometimes when it felt like the bills were weighing too heavy on his chest. He opened the roll-up door. Light spilled in. The air smelled of grease, old oil, and the sweet memory of his wife's cooking, which was gone now. A quiet space in their home and his heart. The business went slow. Most of the farmers around paid him little, bringing him eggs, sacks of grain, or old tools in exchange for fixing a broken axle or a leaking radiator. Sometimes they paid in cash after harvest. The money barely covered the parts, let alone his daughter's school fees and the electricity that flickered when the wind blew just right. He fixed what he could. He stayed honest. That was his promise to the only family he had left. He had learned everything the hard way. After his wife died in a small clinic because they could not afford the better hospital, Malik promised himself that he would not let poverty steal their future again. He worked long days, sometimes through the night when a truck broke down on the highway, sometimes taking small jobs in the city when a courier gave him one. He slept in his old chair after the day ended, with his hands smelling of oil, and woken up with the same hope tucked inside him. Enough work today to keep Amina smiling tomorrow, that morning. As he was wiping his hands on a rag, his old phone buzzed. He looked down. It was a call from the neighboring village. A voice he knew from years of trading and farming. Mr. Khan said the truck was stuck. The old supply truck had slid into the soft edge of the ridge near the far field. Without that truck, the workers could not move the seed sacks or the harvest. The delay could spoil days of hard effort. Malik knew the path what lay beyond the fence, the mud pits, the small creek that turned into a shallow river when it rained. It was a long way. The caller offered what he could, a small advance, and the promise of a bit more when it was done. It would not be much, but it was enough to buy fuel for a week and maybe fix the crack in the trailer door that let wind blow in. Malik grabbed his worn jacket, tossed a toolbox into the back of his own pickup, and drove the dusty road that led out past the fields and into the longer dirt track. The sun had just started to touch the edges of the hills. The road shook the truck as if it wanted to wake every bone in his body. He remembered how his father once took him on a similar path, teaching him how to read the smell of oil, how to listen to a motor's breath. Malik thought about how he had learned not just to fix machines but to feel them, as if they carried people's lives in their hums and rattles. He reached the farm after an hour. The farm was larger than most he had seen nearby. Terraced fields rolled down the slope, green with hopeful plants that had grown despite little rain. A small wooden building stood at the center with solar panels struggling on its roof liles. Doing he would learn soon, though he did not know her name yet. The truck was up the ridge, half buried in mud, wheels spinning uselessly, its cargo locked in the back. Workers stood around, anxious and tired, wiping their foreheads with dirty cloths. Malik stepped out, the dust covering his shoes like a thin coat of armor. He took a breath and started walking up. The woman on the ridge was watching the truck, with a serious face. She was not in the thin clothes of a laborer. Her boots were heavy and covered in mud. Her sleeves were rolled up, and her hands rested on her hips. She was not the type to wait for someone to fix things for her. When she saw Malik walk up with his toolbox, she did not offer a greeting or ask a question. She just nodded as if she had expected him to come. Malik climbed and introduced himself. "I heard you had trouble. I can get it out and fix you up." "What happened?" She pointed to the broken axle and the deep rut. "The truck slipped when coming up. We loaded it too heavy. The axle cracked when it twisted. If we do not move the seeds, now the rain will spoil them." "I am Leela," she said after a pause, but she did not give him more than her name. He saw no fancy jewelry, no flash. She looked like someone who had taken the place and made it real with her hands. She handed him the keys. "You can start." He climbed down, put his toolbox near the truck, and began. He crawled under, looked at the broken part, and shook his head. "This is a deep one," he murmured. He tested the metal, listening carefully with his fingers. The axle had a hairline fracture that ran deeper than the surface. The wheel bearing had been damaged too, and the brake line had a slow leak. He called for the hydraulic jack. He did not rush. His work was methodical. He cleaned the mud, examined the tools, and talked quietly to himself, the way old mechanics did when they wanted the machine to listen. Layla watched him. She watched him work, the way his hands moved without shaking, the way he talked to the truck like it understood him. She glanced toward the fields where workers were looking anxiously. "Can you finish today?" she asked. "I can," he said, "but I will need a new axle. The one here is cracked badly. I can make a temporary brace, but it will not hold long. I need to go get a proper part. There's a small shop in town. 40 minutes past the crossroad. I will bring it back. I will have your truck ready before sunset." She did not argue. She handed him a small envelope with a few bills. "Take what you need," she said. "If it takes longer, I'll find a way to help the workers keep going. They're waiting on this." He took the money and tucked it into his pocket. He saw the worry in her eyes. He could have asked questions: why the farm looked more organized than others, why she was there alone with no one else from the big city showing up, why her hands had small calluses that came from work and not just from being present. He kept his questions inside. He fixed the truck's temporary braces so it would not sink deeper, then drove back down the ridge, loaded his own pickup with the parts he needed, and went to the town. The small shop was run by an old friend, Jamal, who still remembered Malik's father. "You again," Jamal said with a dry smile. "You want the same old miracle?" "Need an axle, new bearing, and a brake line?" Malik replied. He did not ask about money. He knew the price. Jamal pulled a dusty part from the shelf, checked it, and nodded. "I can do it. You paying now or later?" "Now." Malik laid the bills down. He had taken less from his own work to fill up Amina's lunchbox. He counted the change twice before leaving. He rode back with the parts strapped carefully, as if carrying something fragile. He thought about how the truck rolling again would help the workers, how the seeds would move, how the small chain of people depending on this harvest would get through. He thought about Amina's math paper and how he wanted her to see him succeed. Even in a small way that day, he reached the ridge again, worked without stopping. He replaced the axle, tightened the bolts with the right torque, fixed the brake line, and replaced the bearing. He changed the oil, cleaned the filters, and tested the motion. He lowered the truck, the wheels touched the ground, and for a moment, there was a quiet breath between them, truck, mechanic, and the woman who had waited. He started the engine. It growled low, then settled into a smooth rhythm, like someone waking from a deep sleep. He pushed the truck gently forward, testing the strength. The truck moved, steady. The workers started clapping softly, relief washing Across their faces, Layla walked beside him once the truck was on flat ground. She looked at Malik with a small smile. "You did it," she said. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "It was close," he admitted. "The axle was worse than I thought. If you were late another day, the seeds would have lost value." She looked toward the fields. "We can't afford to lose, not this year." He packed his tools back. "You want I can come back during harvest? Keep an eye. I can help with the other trucks." Layla watched Malik leave with the repaired truck. She stayed a moment looking down the ridge, then turned back to the workers. Her voice was calm but firm as she gave new instructions. The delay had tested their patience, and she wanted to make sure nothing else broke. She walked among them, checking the irrigation lines, asking about seed storage, listening to the small worries and fixing what she could with her own hands. The workers respected her, not because she had a title, but because she moved like someone who understood what pressure felt like. She did not speak much about her family or the city. The farm needed her attention now. Later, when the sun dropped a little and the air cooled, she sat on the low wall of the storage shed. The men went back to their tasks. One of the young workers brought her a cup of thin tea. She wrapped her fingers around it, letting the warmth flow in. The truck's engine could be heard in the distance, purring as Malik drove back to his garage. Layla felt a small relief. The harvest was safe for the moment. Still, a quiet question sat under the surface, the one about the man who had worked, without speaking much, who had refused to take anything beyond fair pay, and who had the kind of silence that sometimes was the result of pain. She did not know his life. He had told her only that he could come back if she wanted, to help with other trucks. That offer stayed in her mind. She had been around many people who offered help with strings attached, who used kindness like a way to control. Malik's help was simple. He had fixed what was broken, asked nothing extra, and left without asking a single question about why she was here or why the farm was run the way it was. She saw his fatigue in the way he walked and the small pause in his eyes when he looked out over the fields. That pause felt like weight. Over the next few days, Malik kept his word. He came back twice more, quietly checking other equipment. He did not ask for a contract or promise. He would show up early, glance over a tractor's worn belt, advise the manager to replace a filter soon, then leave with a nod. Layla began to notice him arriving before the sun, walking around the farm like a quiet watchman. She started making small excuses to speak with him. Once she asked about the irrigation system, and he explained in simple words how a small leak in the main line could waste water and make the soil dry in patches. He showed her where to put a small cloth to catch drips and how to tighten the connection. Without needing expensive tools, the fields, which had gone cracked in small places, began to look more even. She listened to him like a student, but there was no school in his tone. He spoke like someone sharing what keeps him going, not telling her what to do. One afternoon, after the day's work finished and the workers were returning to the kitchen area with dinner pots, Layla asked if Malik could stay a little longer. He was cleaning his tools. His hands had small scars, and his skin shone with the light sweat from the sun. He set the wrench down slowly and turned to her. "You wanted to talk?" he asked. She looked at him directly, without any disguise of formality. "I want to know how you do it, not just the fixing. How you keep going with so little support. The people out here, some of them look at you like you are a kind of rescue, but you do not act like someone who wants something from them. You just do what you do." Malik paused. He was not used to being asked about himself. Usually people asked for help or insisted on paying more than they could afford. He leaned against the wooden post of the shed and wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. "I do it because I have to," he said quietly. "I have a girl. She needs school books, clean clothes, and a future where she does not think fixing broken things is the only way to live. My wife died. I promised her that I would keep us moving. Some days it is small wins. Truck fixed, a grade report from Amina, a customer who pays on time. I do not look for big things. I just look for enough." Layla listened. She had been taught to measure success in numbers, in brand growth, in how the family name appeared in magazines and business reports. Malik's life had no reports. It had pieces. The way he talked to his daughter, the way he treated a broken Axel like a problem that mattered. You never ask for anything more than the work, she asked. He shrugged. I get paid. It is enough. If I take more, it is not honest. People here need to know I am not trying to take advantage. No, if I fix something, it is because it should be fixed, not because I want to sell them more or because I want to get into their business. That is the line I keep. If you blur it, people start to doubt everything. I have seen that happen. He looked at the distant fields. Sometimes, when it gets too heavy, I think maybe I could ask for better pay. But I also know the farms run on thin lines, so I choose quiet. I choose to do the job right. That keeps me going. Alayla felt something in her chest loosen. She had been trying to make her own choice on the farm, not the one assigned by her family, but the one where she could feel real. She had done it by being in the fields, by learning the names of the crops, by showing she would not let her people fail. She had not expected to meet someone who lived like that, with no plan for power, only purpose. I have been trying to grow this place for months, she said. My family thinks managing the farm is a temporary project. They send messages about profit margins, about branding the produce under the family name. They do not ask the people here what they need. They ask me to make reports. I want to do it differently. I do not know how yet. He gave her a small smile. You already did one thing different. You listen. Most of the people with money only talk to themselves. Do not listen to the sound of the wind, or the way the soil cracks, or how a worker's face changes when something is wrong. That tells you more than a report ever will. She looked down at her cup. The tea had cooled. Why do you stay in a place where you have so little help? You could go to the city. You could work on the big contract jobs if you wanted. You have the SCTO. Skill? You could ask for more. I could, he said. But the city has its own weight. Here I know the people. And when a broken part is just a small crack or at the start of something worse, out there, I would be another number. Here, if I fix something, I see the face of the farmer breathe out. I see Amina's eyes when she says she got a good grade. That matters more than a big contract. And I still get to keep my pride. I am not a number here. I am a man trying to keep his promise. She nodded slowly. Silence settled between them, not awkward, but filled with the soft sound of the evening distant laughter, a dog's bark, the occasional creak of wood. She wanted to ask more. She wanted to know why he kept his own pain so quiet, what his wife had loved about him, what he feared the most. Instead, she asked a simple question. Do you have help at home? Daughter helps with small things. She brings me tea when I forget. She draws pictures and pastes them on the wall. She makes me laugh when I want to give up. That is help enough. He rubbed his shirt sleeve where the fabric had faded from time and work. Sometimes I wish I had someone to talk to about more than parts and payment, but the world is busy, so I keep moving. Leela looked at him and, without thinking too much, said, if you ever need something real help, tell me. Not with a job or a contract, just if you need someone to listen, or a few bags of rice when the store is low. I do not know your world, but I can try. He blinked, then smiled gently. I will remember. You do not owe me anything. The farm is doing better. That helps all of us. That is enough for me. Great. The next morning, Layla went to the small town herself. She had a list of supplies and a small envelope with cash she could have used to pay for consultants if she wanted. Instead, she bought extra paint and small gifts. Went to Malik's garage before he arrived with the sun. She waited under the shade of the tin roof and watched the early light touch the tools. When Malik arrived, he saw her standing there, with a paper cup of warm tea in her hands. You didn't have to come, he said, surprised. I wanted to, she answered simply. She handed him the cup. You look tired. Thought this might help. He took the cup. Thank you. He took a small sip. It was strong and sweet, the way Amina liked to make hers. Looked up. You didn't need to do this. Wanted to, she repeated. The workers said the irrigation line near the east field is leaking again. I thought you might want to see it before it gets worse. I also brought a small sack of flour. My people have extra this season. I can send more if you need. He looked at the flower and then at her. He could have thanked her and refused. Instead, he nodded once. The line is small. I can fix it today. The flower, give it to Amina. She likes making flatbread on weekends. He paused. I hope you are not changing things because you feel bad. That is the kind of help that makes people dependent. I respect you more because you come and ask, not because you push. She lifted her chin a little, a small smile forming. I am learning that is different from feeling bad. I want to see this place stay. I want to do that with people like you, not over them. He turned to go inside the garage. Then let's start. That leak will be a bigger problem if we wait. He took the flower and set it by the small shelf where he kept bread for Amina. He picked up his wrench. They worked side by side without many words. She watched how he handled each tool. He showed her the right pressure, how to feel the tension when tightening a bolt, not by looking at the number. Leela stood on the porch of the farmhouse one morning, holding a clipboard in her hand. The sky was cloudy, and the wind carried the smell of soil and rain. Harvest time was near, and everything had to run smoothly.
How one broken machine could delay
the work of dozens of farmers. She checked the list of vehicles. One tractor needed a new belt. 2 trucks had oil leaks, and another one had trouble starting. She had already made up her mind. Malik was the one she trusted to handle it all. Over the last few weeks, he had become part of the farm without making any noise. He never asked too many questions. He just showed up, worked with his head down, and left after making sure everything was running. The workers respected him, and even the shy ones felt comfortable around him. They called him by and brought him tea while he worked. Malik always thanked them politely and got back to the job. That morning, as she waited for him, Leela's phone buzzed. It was her father's assistant, Omar. She stared at the screen for a second before answering. Omar's voice was cold and to the point. Miss Leela, the chairman wants you in the city by this weekend. There's a gala dinner for our business. Partners, you're expected to be there. Lila sighed. I've told him I'm staying at the farm. We have harvest next week. This is not a request, Omar said firmly. You've been hiding out there for months.
Our people are starting to talk.
Your place is in the boardroom, not in the mud with farmers. She hung up the call without replying. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She looked out at the fields, then toward the road where Malik's truck always appeared. A moment later, she saw the familiar, soundless approach, the rattling engine, the dusty tires, the man behind the wheel with steady eyes. Malik stepped out and waved. Morning. I heard. The tractor's acting up again. She smiled, trying to hide her thoughts. Yeah, and 2 of the trucks have started leaking oil. I think they're all trying to fall apart before harvest. He chuckled lightly. Machines are like people. They complain when the big day is near. They walked to the barn together. Malik opened the truck's back door and pulled out his tools. He worked while Leela stood nearby. She found herself talking more than usual, telling him stories about her younger days. How her father expected her to take over the family business. How she had once sat in rooms full of CEOs without saying a single word. Malik listened without judgment. He just nodded and said, sometimes silence teaches more than speeches. She paused. Do you ever think about doing something big? Starting a big garage in the city? Making more money? Malik didn't stop working. Think about Amina. That's my big goal. If she's happy, I've done enough. Big garages come with big problems. Here, I know what matters. I don't need more. Layla watched him closely. She felt calm around him. But her world was about to get noisy again. 2 days later, a black SUV arrived at the farm. It carried Omar, the assistant, dressed in a spotless suit, stepping out like the ground didn't deserve his shoes. The workers looked at him from a distance. Omar asked for Leela, and when she came out, he didn't bother hiding his annoyance. You've really gotten used to this life, haven't you? He said, glancing at her muddy boots. Your father is furious. Says either you attend the gala or he sends someone else to take over this place. Layla stayed calm. Let him send someone. But make sure they know how to fix a broken water. Pump or run a field during harvest. Omar looked past her, toward Malik, who was working on the engine of the small truck. "Is that the mechanic everyone's talking about?" he asked. Leela's tone sharpened. "His name is Malik. He's the reason this farm is still running." Omar raised an eyebrow. "You're spending a lot of time with him." "That won't look good for the family. You know how the press twists things?" Leela's face hardened. "You worry too much about appearances. Maybe you worry more about how many families this farm supports." Omar stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Leela, this man has no place in your life. He's just ... simple. Don't forget who you are." Leela didn't respond. She walked away, her fists clenched. At night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the look on Malik's face when Omar stared at him like he was less. Malik didn't say anything, but she could tell it had hit him. Somewhere deep, the next morning, she met Malik by the shed. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "I haven't been fully honest. I'm not just the woman running this farm. I'm Leela Fareed, daughter of Fareed Industrial Group." Malik looked up slowly. He wiped his hands with a cloth and stood still. She continued, "The land, the trucks, most of it is tied to my father's company. I came here to prove I could handle it alone. I never meant to hide it from you, but I didn't want you to treat me differently." Looked thoughtful. "You don't need to explain. I kind of guessed it. The way you talk, the way you walk, it's not like the others here. But you listened. You worked. That's what mattered to me." She let out a breath. "They want me back in the city. They say I shouldn't be here, that I don't belong with people like you." Malik looked her in the eye. "And what do you believe?" She looked down. "I believe this place is the first real thing I've done. I don't want to give it up." Malik nodded, then don't. Smiled. Easier said than done. Later that week, Leela's father made a decision. He called a press conference and announced plans to take over the farm operations under the company's official banner. The move would turn the small farm into a branded Fareed Green model, a polished, packaged version of what it already was. Leela was to lead it, but only if she cut ties with anyone not from the company, including Malik. Omar brought her the contract. "Sign it, and you keep the farm, but not with him." She stared at the paper, then she looked out the window where Malik was helping a young worker fix a plow. She saw the way he bent down to explain each step, never rushing, never showing. Off she stood up. "Tell my father I won't sign. If he wants this farm, he can run it without me, but he won't run it without the people who made it work." Omar looked stunned. "You're giving up everything?" She smiled sadly. "No, I'm keeping what matters." She walked outside and found Malik packing his tools. "They're taking over," she said. "I figured," he replied. "I told them." "No," he looked surprised. "Why?" She shrugged. "Because this isn't just about land. It's about the people who work it. And I'd rather lose power than lose purpose." Malik looked at her with respect. "You're stronger than most people I've met." She smiled. "That's because I've been learning from people like you." That night, Malik and Amina sat outside their trailer under the stars. She showed him a small drawing she made of the farm, the fields, and a mechanic standing next to a smiling woman. He looked at the drawing and smiled. "Is that me?" Amina nodded. "And the lady who always brings us tea. She looks kind." He didn't say much. But deep inside, he knew something had changed. Not just in the farm. Not just in Leela, but in the quiet way people could stand up side by side, even when their worlds were different, and that, he thought, was worth more than money. It was the kind of respect that didn't need words. It was earned. And it was real. The morning after Leela refused to sign the takeover contract, the air at the farm felt different. The sky was clear, and the sun warmed the soil gently, but a quiet tension hung in the background. The workers didn't know the details yet, but they could sense something had changed. Leila moved through the fields with her usual calm, checking the equipment, talking to the team. But inside, her heart was heavy. She had made her choice. She had turned down her father's offer, the company's money, and a powerful position. All because she believed this farm meant something more. But now, the future was uncertain. Without her father's support, the farm might lose access to big markets, loans, and even basic machinery. And she didn't know how long they could survive on their own. She walked to the back of the property, where Malik was helping an older farmer repair a grain dryer. He stood up when he saw her, wiping his hands on a cloth as usual. His face was steady, but his eyes searched hers. "Did they say anything else?" he asked. Layla shook her head. "Nothing. Just silence." Malik looked away, then nodded. "That's their answer, then. They'll let the place struggle to prove a point." "I know," she said softly. "I just didn't think it would happen so fast. Malik didn't say I told you so." Instead, he picked up his wrench and went back to the broken machine. "This part," he said, pointing, "is worn out. It needs replacing. But we can try welding it for now. Might hold until next harvest." Layla crouched beside him. "You think we'll make it to next harvest?" He looked her straight in the eyes. "It depends. If we give up now, then no. But if we work like we always have, smart, steady, together we have a chance." His words stayed with her all day. She began making calls, reaching out to local suppliers, trying to find cheaper parts, second-hand machines, and small grants. She called a few farmer cooperatives she had met over the months, asking if they would be open to shared deliveries and equipment rental. It wasn't easy. Most people hesitated. Some were kind, but cautious. Others didn't want to get involved. With someone who had just turned down a rich business family. Still, she kept going. Meanwhile, Malik made his own quiet efforts. He started gathering the younger workers in the evening, teaching them basic machine repair. He explained how to change belts, fix filters, and spot signs of trouble early. He said if we all know a little, then no machine ever stays broken too long. The workers respected him more than ever. He didn't speak loudly or promise big rewards. He just showed up, worked hard, and treated everyone the same. One evening, while Leela and Malik were sitting outside the shed, drinking tea, an unexpected visitor arrived. A silver car rolled in slowly, its headlights off, and stopped near the entrance. A tall man in a white shirt stepped out. Layla stood up at once. It was her father. He looked around, taking in the worn trucks, the patched-up buildings, and the group of workers resting nearby after a long day. He walked toward Leela, his expression unreadable. "Can we talk?" he said. She nodded and led him toward the storage shed, where they could speak privately. Malik stayed back, but kept his eyes on them. Her father spoke first. "I gave you a choice. You refused it. And now you're asking people for help. Strangers, farmers." Layla stood straight. "They're not strangers. They're my team, my friends." He shook his head slowly. "You've always been stubborn, but I never thought you'd walk away from your own family." "I didn't walk away from family," she said calmly. "I walked toward something that felt real." He paused, then continued. "You know the press is watching? You working with a local mechanic, talking about independence? Turning down the company name it makes people ask questions. Our investors are nervous." She felt the pressure building inside. "So I'm a problem now?" He didn't answer that. Instead, he looked over at Malik. "What do you even know about that man?" she answered without hesitation. "Enough. I know he works harder than anyone I've met. I know he teaches, shares, and never asks for anything more than what he earns." Her father stepped closer. "You could come back. We'll let you run this farm your way, but under the brand. You can still make this place successful. But you'll have to stop associating with people who don't match our image." Leela's heart pounded. She had a chance to save the farm, but only by letting go of Malik and everything he stood for. She looked her father in the eye. "No, I won't do that. I'd rather lose the farm than lose the people who helped me build it." There was silence between them. Finally, her father sighed. "You're just like your mother, always putting values over money." He looked tired. "I hope you know what you're doing." Then he turned and left. The silver car disappeared down the road, leaving dust in its path. Later, Layla found Malik near the garage. "He came to offer the farm back," she said. Malik looked surprised. "And he wanted me to cut ties with you and the others." to make it look better. He waited for her to finish. I said no. A quiet breeze passed between them. I'm not surprised, he said. You're stronger than they think. But deep inside, both of them knew the road ahead would be harder now. The very next day, a challenge arrived. The bank called Leela to inform her that one of the credit lines tied to her father's company was being frozen. That meant less access to fuel, seed storage, and emergency purchases. She sat in the office, her head in her hands, trying to stay calm. Every number on the page seemed like a wall closing in. Just then, an idea came to her. She remembered Malik once said, "If everyone knows a little, we never have to depend too much on one big name." She got up and walked to the village. She visited the local council and explained everything. The farm's struggles, her decision to stand on her own, and how many families were at risk of losing their income if the harvest failed. The council listened. Slowly, a few members nodded. "We can speak with nearby cooperatives," one said. "If you're willing to open the farm to joint training and fair pricing, maybe we can support it as a community initiative." She agreed at once. That week, Malik helped organize a skills camp on the farm. Farmers from nearby areas came too. Learn basic engine repairs, irrigation fixes, and low-cost maintenance tips. People began to see the farm not just as land, but as a center of learning and support. A small local newspaper even wrote a piece. The Mechanic and the Millionaire's Daughter Saving a Farm with Tools and Trust. When Malik saw the article, he smiled, but said nothing. He kept working. In the final days before the harvest, the fields were alive with energy. Trucks moved on repaired wheels. Pipes ran steady water. Workers laughed again. Leela stood beside Malik as the first truck left for the market. "We made it," she whispered. He nodded. One season down. She looked at him. "Thank you for staying, for believing in this place." Shook his head. "I didn't stay for the farm. Stayed because you believed in people like me." And in that moment, they both knew something had changed, not just in the soil beneath them, but in their hearts. The farm was no longer just land or business. It was a story of courage, of standing up, of not letting power decide what was right, and they weren't done yet. The next season was waiting. The morning sun spread its golden light across the wide fields. Dew sparkled on the leaves, and the farm looked more alive than ever. Birds chirped, workers moved quickly but happily, and the old machines rumbled steadily, each one a symbol of quiet victory. The harvest season had finally arrived, and against all odds, the farm was ready. Layla stood near the storage shed, holding a notebook and checking the last boxes. Trucks had been loaded, storage bins were full, and for the first time in weeks, there was no emergency to fix. The workers she had trained, with Malik's help, now worked like a real team, confident, proud, and united. The fear of losing the farm had turned into something else. Hope Malik walked toward her, wiping his hands on a cloth as always. "The last truck's oil was low," he said. But I topped it off. Should be good to go." Layla smiled. "The fifth one you fixed this week." He gave a small laugh. "They keep me busy." She nodded, then looked at the open road beyond the gate. Today, the first harvest batch goes to the city market. No company logo, no rich investors, just us, local produce, local people. Malik nodded. That's how it should be. Truck's engine started, and everyone gathered to wave it off. Mina, Malik's daughter, stood beside her father, holding a small handmade sign that said "Fresh from the Field." Her face glowed with pride. She had drawn the sign herself. With bright colors and added a little flower in the corner, the workers clapped and cheered as the truck left the farm. It wasn't just carrying fruits and vegetables. It was carrying a message that this land, once seen as small and powerless, had stood tall without being controlled by big money or outside influence. Layla turned to Malik. "I wanted to ask you something." He replied, adjusting his cap. "We've come a long way. I couldn't have done it without you. I want to offer you a full-time leadership role, not just fixing machines, but helping train others. It's managing our cooperative's workshop, teaching young people. You'd get a good salary. More importantly, freedom to shape how we grow. Malik didn't answer right away. He looked out at the fields, then down at his hands. I've always been a simple man. I didn't go to college or work in offices. I just fix things. Layla shook her head. That's exactly why you're the right person. You've lived the struggle. People trust you because they know you understand them, and you've taught more than anyone else. He glanced at Amina, who was helping a worker carry empty crates. If it gives her a future, if it means I can help others rise too, then I'll say yes. Layla smiled. You won't regret it. Days passed and the farm continued to shine. More buyers came not from big companies, but from towns and markets that wanted fresh, clean produce. People wanted to know where their food came from. They asked for names, not logos. They asked for stories, not numbers. And the story of the farm of Leela and Malik began to spread. Not as a headline on big news channels, but through quiet whispers, shared smiles, and heartfelt conversations in tea shops and village squares. One morning, a familiar black car rolled into the farm. This time, it wasn't filled with threats or papers to sign. It carried Leela's father. He stepped out slowly, looking around. The workers recognized him but didn't stop working. They knew the story now, and they knew who had stood by them when it mattered. Layla walked toward him. She wasn't nervous this time. She was calm, strong, and clear. Her father spoke first. I saw the sales report. You've doubled your orders, with no company support. That's impressive. Leela didn't smile. I didn't need a brand. I needed people, and they showed up. He nodded. I underestimated you. Layla crossed her arms, and Malik. Her father looked over at the garage, where Malik was showing a group of teenagers how to repair a small tractor. He's doing good work. I see that now. There was a pause before her father continued. I want to offer a partnership, not to take over, but to support your model. Fair terms, no control, just shared goals. Layla thought about it. She had no interest in giving away what they had built. But maybe, just maybe, a new kind of cooperation could grow in where respect came first. I'll think about it, she said, but only if Malik and the workers agree. This is not mine alone. Her father looked surprised but nodded. That's fair. Later, Layla told Malik everything. He listened quietly, then asked, Do you trust him now? She took a moment. I don't know, but I trust myself. And I trust this place. If we ever say yes, it'll be on our terms. He smiled. Then we'll keep watching, together. In the months that followed, Malik's workshop grew. A group of young trainees came regularly. Amina, now 13, started taking notes and asking questions like a little apprentice. She proudly told everyone that her dad taught people how to fix broken things, not just machines. But hopes, the farm expanded its connections with other villages. They shared seeds, water-saving tips, and even started a small farmers' fair. Once a month, local musicians played songs in the evenings. Children ran across the fields. Elders sat and told stories. One evening, during a small celebration, Layla stood on a wooden stage. The workers clapped and called her name. Malik stood beside her, looking proud but humble. She held the microphone and said, This farm is no longer just mine, it's ours. It's built with hands, sweat, and trust. And if we continue this way, helping each other, lifting each other, we can teach the world a new kind of success. The crowd cheered. Malik stepped up, smiled at the crowd, and said something simple but powerful. We didn't win because we were rich. We won because we didn't give up. We fixed what was broken, and we did it with dignity. That night, as the sky filled with stars, Leela sat with Malik and Amina near the bonfire. The flames danced gently, warming the cool air. Amina leaned on her dad's shoulder. You're famous now, she teased. He laughed. I just fixed things, remember? But you fixed more than trucks, Papa, she said. You fixed the farm.
Ow!
You helped Miss Layla. You helped everyone. He looked at her and then at Layla, who smiled and nodded. It wasn't just me, he said. It was all of us. And it was true. Because in a world that often values power over kindness and wealth over wisdom, a single mechanic with a strong heart and a woman with a quiet dream had changed a whole community. Not with money, not with fame, but with simple honesty. It's hard work and respect. And that was a story worth remembering forever.